You're not lazy. You exercise. You probably even hit your step count most days. And yet, if you spend the majority of your waking hours in a chair, at a desk, in a car, on a couch, your body is quietly accumulating damage that no gym session is undoing. This is the part the fitness industry doesn't have a product for. Because the threat isn't the absence of exercise, it's the presence of prolonged sitting. And the biology of what happens inside your body during those hours of stillness is far more alarming than most people have been told. Let's start with something your doctor probably hasn't said out loud. A landmark analysis published in the Annals of Internal Medicine reviewed data from over 47 studies and found that prolonged sitting is independently associated with cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and early death, regardless of how much a person exercises. Read that again. Regardless of exercise. People who sat for the majority of their day and worked out regularly still showed significantly worse health outcomes than people who simply moved more throughout the day. Exercise matters, but it does not cancel sitting. The two operate on completely separate biological tracks. So what's actually happening inside your body when you sit down and stay there? Within the first 60 seconds of sitting, your muscles go electrically quiet. The large postural muscles in your legs and core, the ones that in any other position are constantly firing tiny stabilizing contractions, essentially switch off. Blood flow to the lower extremities slows almost immediately. And here's where it gets interesting. Within 90 minutes of uninterrupted sitting, your body's production of lipoprotein lipase, the enzyme responsible for pulling fat out of the bloodstream and converting it into usable energy, drops by up to 90%. 90%. The machinery your body uses to process dietary fat nearly shuts down. The fat that was supposed to be cleared from your bloodstream lingers. Triglycerides rise. The slow accumulation begins. This is the mechanism that makes sitting uniquely dangerous, separate from simply not moving. When you sleep, your metabolism adjusts appropriately. Your body knows it's in a rest and repair state. But sitting sends a different signal entirely. You're awake, your systems expect demand, and instead they receive nothing. The physiological confusion triggers a cascade of responses that, over years, become structural damage. Insulin is at the center of this cascade. Muscle contraction, even gentle, low-intensity movement, is one of the primary mechanisms by which your cells absorb glucose independently of insulin. When your muscles go quiet for hours at a time, that independent absorption stops. Blood glucose rises. Your pancreas secretes more insulin to compensate. And over time, with repeated daily exposure, the cells that once responded efficiently to insulin begin to resist it. This is how prolonged sitting directly accelerates the development of type 2 diabetes, not through diet alone, not through weight alone, but through the simple mechanical fact of stillness. The muscle isn't contracting. The glucose has nowhere efficient to go. And your body is paying interest on that debt every single day. But the metabolic damage is only part of the story, which brings us to what's happening above the waist, specifically inside your cardiovascular system. When you sit, particularly with poor posture, blood pools in the legs. The calf muscles, often called the body's second heart because of the role they play in pumping venous blood back up toward the chest, are doing nothing. Circulation slows. Endothelial cells, the thin layer lining your blood vessels, are exquisitely sensitive to blood flow. They require the sheer stress of moving blood to produce nitric oxide, the molecule that keeps vessels flexible, open, and healthy. Hours of sitting means hours of reduced flow, reduced nitric oxide production, and a gradual stiffening of the arterial walls. Studies comparing desk workers to more active counterparts have found measurable differences in arterial stiffness within weeks of sedentary behavior. This isn't a decades-long process. The damage accumulates fast. And then there's the structural damage to your spine, which most people don't connect to systemic health, but absolutely should. The discs between your vertebrae don't have their own blood supply. They depend on movement, the gentle compression and decompression of walking, shifting, standing, to absorb nutrients and expel waste. When you sit for hours, particularly in the forward flexed position that most desk postures create, The discs are compressed asymmetrically and deprived of that fluid exchange. Over years, this contributes to degeneration, chronic pain, and a subtly altered posture that affects breathing mechanics, core engagement, and even mood. Chronic back pain, in many cases, is not a structural defect you were born with. It is a lifestyle injury that accumulated one unbroken hour at a time. Now let's talk about the brain, because this is the part that should genuinely concern anyone who considers their cognitive health a priority. A study from UCLA found that people who sat for more hours per day showed thinning of the medial temporal lobe, the brain region critical for memory formation and consolidation. The relationship held even after accounting for physical activity levels. Sitting, it appears, affects brain structure independently of whether you exercise. The proposed mechanism involves reduced cerebral blood flow during prolonged stillness, combined with the inflammatory markers that prolonged sitting reliably elevates. Chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind that builds slowly over years of sedentary behavior, has been linked to accelerated cognitive decline, depression, and increased dementia risk. The chair is not a neutral object. It is an environment with biological consequences. If you want to keep receiving breakdowns like this, science translated into something you can actually use, hit subscribe. This is exactly what this channel is built for. So where does the line fall? How much sitting becomes dangerous? Researchers generally point to 6 hours of uninterrupted daily sitting as the threshold where health risks begin to rise measurably. Most full-time desk workers far exceed that. And here's the trap. The solution is not simply standing desks or a single long walk at lunch. The research is clear that it's the interruption of sitting that matters most, not a replacement for it. A study in diabetes care found that breaking up sitting with just 2 minutes of light walking every 20 to 30 minutes produced significantly better blood glucose and insulin responses than sitting continuously, even when total step counts were identical. 2 minutes. Every half hour. The frequency of interruption matters more than the total volume of movement. This is the practical shift that changes everything, and it costs nothing. Set a timer for 25 to 30 minutes while you work. When it goes off, stand up. Walk to the kitchen. Do 10 slow bodyweight squats. Walk to the window. It doesn't need to be a workout. It needs to be a signal. A signal to your muscles to reactivate. A signal to your blood vessels to resume normal flow. A signal to your metabolic machinery that you are not, in fact, sedentary. And because biology responds to frequency, those signals compound across a day, a week, a month, in ways that single bouts of exercise simply cannot replicate. Before we close, drop a comment below and tell me, how many hours a day do you estimate you're actually sitting? Most people are shocked when they add it up. The honest picture is this. We built a world that requires sitting. School desks, office chairs, commutes, screens, and then we told people to compensate with 45 minutes of gym time and considered the account balanced. But the account was never balanced. The biology doesn't work that way. Sitting is not the absence of exercise. It is its own distinct physiological state, with its own distinct consequences on its own distinct timeline. And those consequences, the insulin resistance, the arterial stiffening, the disc degeneration, the cognitive thinning, don't announce themselves. They accumulate quietly, invisibly, over years, until the day they're no longer quiet. The intervention, though, is almost absurdly simple. Move. Not hard, not long, not dramatically, just frequently. Break the stillness before it breaks the biology. 2 minutes of walking every half hour will do more for your long-term metabolic health than an extra day at the gym each week, because it addresses the mechanism the gym never touches. Tomorrow, at your desk, set a timer. Stand up when it goes off. Walk a lap around the room. Sit back down. Do it again. It will feel almost too small to matter. That is precisely what makes it so easy to dismiss, and precisely why most people never do it. But the body doesn't require drama. It requires consistency, and it has been waiting, patiently, for you to give it the one thing it was designed for. The simple, ancient, irreplaceable act of moving through space. The chair isn't going anywhere. but neither is the damage, unless you decide to get up.